Welcome to my presentation about the tropical deciduous forest. Before we begin, I would like to clarify a common misconception. There are two types of tropical forests: the tropical rainforest and the tropical deciduous forest. In this presentation we will be talking about the tropical deciduous forest. Amanda, who will present after me, will be discussing the tropical rainforest. Okay, let's begin. First off, what is a tropical deciduous forest? Tropical deciduous forests cover hot lowlands. This type of forest is usually on the fringe of the tropical rainforest. Pockets of tropical deciduous forest are found in Latin and South America, Africa, Asia and Australia. Rainfall is more than in the tropical savanna, and less than in the tropical rainforest. Winters are hot and dry with average temperatures of 70 to 75 degrees. Summers are very wet, just slightly cooler, in the lower 70 degrees. During the wet season, hot humid air rises off the ground, collides with cool air above, and comes down as rain again. The wet season occurs between May and November. Annual rainfall is between 30 and 50 inches, although some sources claim up to 120 inches. By comparison, Seattle gets about 37 inches of rain a year. Nutrient cycling takes place when shedded leaves are decomposing, releasing their nutrients back into the soil, to be taken up again by roots. Now that we have defined what the tropical deciduous forest is and where to find it, what kinds of plants and animals live in this biome? This biome hosts a great diversity of plants and animal species. Biodiversity is greater than in the savanna, but lower than in the tropical rainforest. Each area of tropical deciduous forest on the various continents may exhibit its own specific subset of plants and animals. Please turn to page 2 of the handout to see pictures of trees common to this biome. Dominant plants are deciduous trees and shrubs as well as grasses. Examples are acacias, certain kinds of juniper and oak, baobabs in Africa and eucalyptus in Australia. Most plants here are pollinated by animals. Please turn to page 3 of the handout for pictures of animals typical for this biome. Many animal species of mammals, birds, reptiles and amphibians live here, as do many kinds of insects. Dominant animals are grazers who live in herds, such as zebras, giraffes, and deer, and the carnivores that eat them, such as tigers, leopards, cheetahs, and hyenas. Tropical deciduous forests on different continents may show variation in their animal species. For instance, giraffes only live in Africa. Many animals that live here have migration patterns that are determined by the wet and dry seasons. Many of them have long legs or wings to make migration possible. Termites live here as well as those animals that eat the termites, such as anteaters, sloth bears, and aardvarks. Other animals of this biome are bees, scorpions, certain kinds of birds such as magpie jays, cuckoos, gwins and hawks, snakes and other lizards, frogs, toads and monkeys. Now we know what kinds of animals live here. And we know that this biome is hot, and we have a wet and a dry season. Next, Let's look at how these conditions have shaped animal and plant adaptations. Please turn to page 4 of the handout. Water conservation is a necessity during the dry season, but not during the wet season. As an adaptation to this environment, trees are losing their leaves during the dry season to guard against dehydration. One tree that is dropping its leaves, the Indio desnuda, has photosynthetic bark, in order to carry on photosynthesis even without leaves. Other trees have very deep roots to find the water table, or a very wide, shallow root system to increase absorption. An adaptation in plants that do not shed their leaves is succulent tissue. An example of a succulent plant are cacti. Trees may also adapt to the hot and dry weather by minimizing leaf surface or holding the leaves in such a way as to minimize sun exposure and dehydration, or by storing water in their roots. Let me give you a few more examples of how nature has adapted to this hot climate with wet and dry seasons. Some trees are using the advent of the rainy season this way. They will flower right before the rainy season. Their flowers will really stand out and thus attract their animal pollinators. In addition, some plant seeds are dispersed by animals that are caching them to store up for the dry season. The life cycle of many insects is timed such that the egg stage is taking place during the dry season. For bees, the dry season presents a problem because they are using water to cool the hive. Lack of water means an overheated hive which can be harmful to them. To deal with heat, animals may burrow underground or have a lot of exposed skin. Because the trees are shedding their leaves, a lot of sunlight reaches the ground. In some areas of the deciduous forest, but not in all of them, this allows for dense ground cover of photosynthetic plants. The dense cover of plants will in turn feed many herbivores. Two other factors that have shaped this biome are forest fires in the dry season and animal grazing. Fire and grazing are important vegetation-forming processes. Some seeds in this biome only germinate after a fire, as you have learned in Bio 213. Trees may be resistant to fire if they are monocots and their vascular bundles are scattered throughout the stem. Vascular bundles in the interior of the stem will survive fire. Grasses will grow back after fire if their underground rhizomes are unscathed. Grazing animals will trample and eat vulnerable tree seedlings. As a result, thorny plants such as acacias are at an advantage here. If an area is overgrazed, patches of bare ground will develop, leading to evaporation and drier soil. Please turn to page 5 of the handout. Some of the plants and animals are highly specialized and even have mutualistic relationships with each other. For example, ants exhibit a mutualistic relationship with acacias. The acacia provides a home for the ants in its hollow thorns. It will also provide food and water for the ants in structures called nectaries, located at the bases of leaves. In return, the ants attack herbivores and insects on the acacia's behalf, and even kill other plants that grow too close. Some bird species have evolved a relationship with the ants so that the ants will not attack the birds as they build their nests in the acacia trees. A few more examples of specialization. Some grasses are too bitter tasting for some animals to eat, but not for others. This way, every species of herbivore has its own preferred food source. Also, different herbivore species are picking leaves at different levels of height from the ground or are grazing at different times of day, to avoid food competition. Soils in this biome have great variety of organisms, but not much about them is known. These soils contain a lot of nutrients and are low in acidity. As a result, much of this biome is used for agriculture and grazing. There are some threats to this biome. What are they? The threats mostly result from human impact. Recall that soils in this area contain a lot of nutrients and are low in acidity. In addition, this biome is frequently located in regions with high population growth rates. As a result, much of this area is deforested and is used for agriculture and grazing. Trees are also being used as a source of fuel, for example, in meal preparation. Deforestation is putting pressure on the ecosystem due to loss of habitation for many animals. Migrating animals have seen their migration routes and access to water supply cut off. Some of the animals that tend to roam over large areas, such as tigers, have increasingly come in conflict with their human neighbors. Further, if forest plants are gone, they can no longer take up CO2. More CO2 in the atmosphere probably means that global man-made climate change will accelerate. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you. Are there any questions?